What's up, you wrestling fanatics and friends? You're listening to the True Wrestling Podcast, episode 89. Thanks for tuning in. I recently had a wide ranging conversation with Greg Williams, head wrestling coach at Utah Valley. We cover everything from program values and success, to his coaches, to the RTC, to the projected starting lineups for this year's team, and we close with his wife's knowledge of wrestling. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Adidas Wrestling. You can check them out at adidaswrestling.com and on Twitter at Adidas Wrestling. You can check out Utah Valley at UVUWRE. That's on Twitter. You can check out the RTC at Utah Valley RTC. You can follow me on Twitter at TrueWrestler1. Look in the notes below the video to see when we start talking about projected lineups. Here with Utah Valley wrestling coach Greg Williams. Coach, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, so you're coming off one of the best seasons from Utah Valley. You had 2 All-Americans. You took 21st at Nationals. Thoughts on last season?
We were really excited about last season for a couple of reasons, and it may not be for all the reasons that other people might think. We had a really good team 3 years ago, 2 years ago, but we unfortunately had a lot of injuries and did not end up getting the results that we wanted. The year Dimitri got hurt, it was the year after he was round of 12. Matt Finley was round of 12 as a sophomore, and he couldn't wrestle anymore between his knee and his back issues. And that kind of broke that down. But, that year, we ended up beating a couple top 15. We're right there with a couple of top 10. And that was without having Taylor Lamont with us that year because he was out with an injury. And so we never had the results throughout the year and at Nationals that we expected with that group. And we knew with that group it could be a game changer for us. As you know, that most people that are top wrestlers want to go to a program that's producing national champions. It's producing All-Americans. So we went into last year, and I'll be honest with you, we had such a disappointing year when Nationals was canceled, and we didn't have the kind of season that we wanted. That we needed to make some changes. You had some questions on here that I read ahead of time about what our theme is for the year. Yeah. Well, a year and a half ago, we had one of our wrestlers who was an All-American, but he left. He went to a different school. And there were some things that I wanted to find out that led into that I wanted to get to the bottom of. And what ended up happening was it opened up a whole can of worms, really. It opened up some things that we wanted to do better, some areas where we feel like our culture wasn't where it needed to be, that we had wrestlers that wanted to blame other people rather than take ownership. We had a starting group, and that was the thing with the guys when we had such a good team is we didn't have a second guy that could step in and be at the same level like the top 10 programs. And so for us, we felt like we had a top 10 team that year if we had everybody in the lineup, but we weren't a top 10 program. We didn't have somebody who could step up if one of those guys got hurt. And so that's obviously we had to have the culture change where our guys who were backups weren't backups. They're starters that weren't starting at the time, that knew that their call was going to happen and that they were going to be able to step up. So when all this was said and done, that spring going into that summer, I went into my AD and my sport administrator and I said, here's what's going to happen. We're going to have one of these two things happen or I'm stepping down at the end of the year. And those two things were either our freshmen were going to progress at a high level like they have in the past, but they had the last couple of years before that, or we're going to put our guys who are capable of being All-Americans on the stand. And I said, if one of those two things happen, I'm going to continue because we'll have momentum. If we had such a bad year and then we had another bad year, and those guys, Taylor and Dimitri, who we knew were capable of being national champs or All-Americans, we needed to see that happen. We needed to see our freshmen progress. And our freshmen progressed better last year than they ever have. We had 2 All-Americans, which we've never had done before. And they're returning, which we've never had before. All of our All-Americans, except for the guy who ended up transferring, have all graduated at that point. So we developed a system. I got my coaches to buy into it, and we put up 4 words in our locker room, that help them with their process, helps them with everything that they do, a big picture, all the steps that need to be there, a way to evaluate that, how to use journals, how to talk to their coaches. And we talked about a 90-10 on ownership, 90 on them, 10 on support. So if something's going wrong, where do you go first? Do you go to the 10%, or do you start looking at yourself and what you can do different? And then, yes, you still communicate with the coaches and your family or what your support group is. But we put those 4 words up, and, you may have a question later and I can go into what those are. But it was my funnest year. No matter what would have happened in Nationals, it was my funnest year. The freshmen bought in. We had been doing group coaches the 3 years, 4 years before. We took that away. So all of my guys weren't relying on one coach as their technique coach. And I ran every practice. Because when I did the group coaches, it almost took me out of the equation. And that wasn't good for our program. They need to know that I'm the leader of the program, that it has somebody that is the guy who's accountable for the program. And so my assistant coaches became their big brothers, and I was dad, and they needed to know that they needed to come to dad if anything was going wrong, but they could go through their brothers first or their leaders on the team. But everything was going to come across my desk if there were any issues that they were having, and they had to buy in that we were there to support them. It's not my job to try to make their life more miserable. So it was a great year in those respects. The fact that those 2 guys both had good tournaments, not the tournaments that they expected or wanted,
yep,
but had good tournaments. We were excited for them. But I love the fact that our guys have bought in, that they're not there to be All-Americans. If they think they can be an All-American, then they're going for a national championship. And they believe that. And the best indicator of that was what both of those guys did when they won in the quarters and they became All-Americans for the first time in their life. They didn't come running over and hug us. They didn't do anything different that they normally did, which is they pointed up to their families and shared it with them and walked off the mat and did their cool down. And then when they did their interview, they weren't done. We haven't accomplished what we came here to do. And so to me, that's huge for our culture change, because we have guys in our room that believe they can be national champs.
Since you started this, I mean, that's good stuff. Can you tell us what the secret sauce is?
Yeah. So the first one is purpose, which in the old days, it's all about goals. What's my goal? Now, if you look at corporate, self-help teams, they talk about your why.
Yep.
So what is your why? Why are you here? What is your purpose for being here? And we want them to define that in the classroom, define that in the restroom, define that in their personal life. We call that the tree of 3, right? Those 3 areas, it's our job as coaches to help them grow and be the best version of themselves in those 3 areas. And so purpose is a big part of that. What is your why? Why are you here wrestling? Why are you here going to school? Because for us, school's every bit as important as wrestling. They need to
Coach, can you hear me?
it's going to affect the other areas. So they need to have that balance in all 3 areas, and we're here to help them. Clear on that, then they're ready to move to the second word, which is their attitude. And the attitude is kind of a broad term, but basically, we added 2 things to that. Last year, the biggest thing was consistency. Whatever they set for sleep time, whatever they set for goals for diet, whatever they set for goals for performance on the mat for practice, performance on the mat in competition, all of those things are broken down. Building their strength, building their conditioning, building their technique, all of those things they need to address. And then, they'll focus on 2 to 3 of those, right? For technique, here's 2 or 3 things that I'm working on. But we have a journal that we want them to have in their locker room that they can make notes after practice that they want to move forward on, whether it's technique or mental toughness, certain areas. But if they're consistent with that, then they're going to get tougher. And this year we added attitude of gratitude and trust. So those are two words we've added with their attitude. Is building trust by communicating, building trust by owning up to mistakes, owning up to whatever, and just moving forward. And then we again, this is a big part of where we talk about their process. So if something's not going right on the mat, or if something that's not going right in their personal life or in school, we go back to, okay, break down where that started. Where's that breaking down? Now let's take a look at that. What do you need to adjust? What can we do to help you? So after we get through the attitude, we set all those things, they understand that process to go back and be able to use the process. Then we go into the word grit, which is how much will it take to break us? And if we're consistent with our attitude, then we're going to be tougher. It's going to take a lot more for us to break. And so grit almost takes care of itself by how my process is, with how clear my goals are and how I approach my attitude and the things that I set in reaching the goals. And then the last is ownership, accountability, the 90-10, making sure that they understand that they are the ones most responsible for their success, even if it's that they need to come tell us what's not going well for them. Like, I'm having a tough time right now, because we can't read their minds. Sometimes we'll see some patterns and go, okay, something's going on. We just had a coaches meeting. One of the coaches, I'll say, who do we have concerns about? And he brought up a name. He said, I just can tell something's off. So I'll be having a meeting with them, just saying, hey, what's going on? How are things going? Anything you're concerned about, and giving them the opportunity. It's a freshman, so they may not trust that process yet. So we need to help them along, and I might have to hold their hand more early on. But those are our 4 words. And I had 34 interviews last year, and it's the first time that I didn't have one person blame anybody else. All it was about was them going back to their process. And granted, our questions were, what did you think you did well with your process last year? Where did you feel like you want more help from us next year? So between those 2 questions, they're focused on, hey, I did really well with this and this and this. And then when the second question is like, yeah, I didn't do this well, the coaches could really help me with this. Then I ask them the same thing about, what did you feel like the teammates were able to do for you? How did they help uplift you? Were there any situations where you felt like they could help you more? What would you like to see more help from your teammates? Did you have a specific situation that was good or bad because of the way the teammates or a teammate, related with you? And then ask those same exact questions with the coaches. Have they helped you? What would you like more help with? Was there a situation that turned out good or bad for you? So that I get a really clear picture of where they're at, what they need to look at for next year. Then I start setting some things that I can do when I do my summer interviews with them going into fall with their goals. Hey, you were mentioning this. Would this help? How would you like to, handle these things? So those words are a great guide. And then we have a theme that's called Next Point. And Next Point is basically that, when I asked them what that meant, and before I told them, they said, oh, you want us to score. You want us to keep scoring throughout the match. I said, absolutely. Love that. Love that. Whether you're ahead or behind, you're still the one dictating. But Next Point is about your life. It's about your next opportunity. It's about your next chance to be the best version of yourself. What can help improve? That can be a specific situation in a match where you get taken down and you're down 2-0. Are you going to drop your head because, I got taken down? Or are you going to score the next point? Okay, it could be something where you're ahead 9-1 and there's still a minute left. Are you going to go for the major? Or are you going to go for the tech or the fall? What is your best opportunity from here? Okay, so it just, apply it to school, okay, you procrastinated. So now that we know that and you're at this situation, moving forward, what's going to be the best version of yourself? Find out what's preventing you, and then let's break through that and let's make a plan. So basically what we did last year is we packaged a process for them. We packaged something that they could go to, and I kicked myself in the butt because we've had this knowledge all this time and we've never packaged it. You're just working individually, you're putting out fires, you're complimenting, you're challenging, and now we can talk about process. And they can go right to where they need to be. And we reinforce this every day by the things that we're talking about.
Good stuff. It clearly worked. I mean, I think your guys, when I watch them compete, they always come to compete. But last year, it felt like people didn't even the guys who got to nationals, no easy out there with your wrestlers. They're coming to compete. Has this changed any visibility as far as recruits go after this season?
Absolutely. There's some good, and there's some things that we can do better. So we actually, the people that we talked to, that we had serious conversations, brought on visits, most all of those guys are signing with us. I had emails from guys that 3 or 4 years ago, we would have reached out to them and they may not have even responded. But they're like, these guys are, like, I sent a couple to Ethan, who's my lead recruiter.
Yeah.
So Coach Lofthouse, I send this to him. I said, this guy, I'm looking at his accolades. I watch it. He's a kid. I know that kid. I've watched him. He's really good. And so we got excited that some of the guys that are reaching out to us are guys that, other Big 10 and Big 12 schools are going to be looking at. The problem that we still have is we don't have a national champion. And so when you're talking about the top 5 guys in a weight class in high school, we're not going to be their first pick. I think if they came and saw what we were doing and they had a chance, to wrestle, and see what we're doing, I think that we would get more of those kids. I love our coaching staff. I think that, the knowledge that's here is great. I think they know how to motivate the guys. And I think that they treat the guys like human beings, and develop respect and trust. And I think there's a lot of times where there's so much pressure to win that you wrestle a kid when they're hurt, because you got to win. You got to win the duel. And our philosophy is basically that, I can't stand to lose. And you're going to ask me a question later that's going to bring out my competition or my competitive spirit. But I can't stand to lose. And what's funny is one of the things that one of my wrestlers said a few years ago was he thought that I wasn't a good coach because I was okay losing. And I said to him, and this is a kid I like a lot, and he's just learning or whatever, but he said that to me. And I said, you've watched the 2 Lofthouses when I had both coaches, Lofthouses. Uh-huh. I said, when we're playing games, you see how they go at each other. I said, there's nobody in this room that's any more competitive than me. There is not. I said, but I have a big picture in mind, and that is to get you guys to compete your very best wrestling in postseason. If I'm wrestling you when you're hurt or tweaked, that's not going to happen. Right. So I'm not going to say, I'll take a loss in a duel over sacrificing a wrestler that could have that opportunity in postseason, because that's really what we're doing. Nobody's going to look back at what their dual meet record was if they're an All-American or if they're a national champion, right? That's when it matters. And so I've sat guys even when they just weren't 100%, and I just needed to give them that rest. And it hurts us, but it doesn't hurt them, and it doesn't hurt us in the long run. And so just like I'm trying to teach them, you've got to have what your big picture is so you can make those decisions easily.
Right. Could you just spend a couple minutes talking about your 2 All-Americans last year, Taylor Lamont and Dimitri Romero?
Absolutely. Those 2 guys couldn't be any more different. Their characters are different, but they have the main things in common that make all champions. They have just an unwavering work ethic. They never take a shortcut. They're very coachable in all areas of their lives. And they take care of business. They're both in a master's program for marriage and family therapy, which is awesome. And it's a demanding program. Like right now, they are scheduled between classes and clients because they're already working with clients and practices. They have no free time. And so I work with them sometime around where we have professionals that we match to our wrestlers that are in their same careers that these guys are going to graduate in, and I have them come speak, and we set up other opportunities for them to get together so that every single one of our wrestlers has networking before they graduate. And so for these 2 guys, I'll have a speaker, but they've got clients, so I excuse them for some things that I normally wouldn't excuse wrestlers for because they have no time. So they have those things in common. They both are super competitive, and neither one of them would shirk wrestling the toughest guy anywhere that they go. And that's what I want. And you're going to ask me a question later about our scheduling. I'll just throw it in with this. we'll wrestle the toughest teams we can wrestle. That's what we want, because that's what's going to prepare us for postseason. We are not putting, like I know coaches in other sports. I'm not going to say necessarily in wrestling, because most wrestling coaches are competitive and feel the same way I do. But I know a coach that we had here that we were like got into an argument because he told me I was being stupid because we're wrestling ranked teams and we have a losing record, and he won't play BYU because they're going to lose to him and, you know, whatever. I mean, and this coach always had a winning record.
Right.
And I was just like, you're never going to get better. And so, you know, I have some other coaches that have come on since that are telling me we're following your model. And they've changed, and we have more teams that are wrestling, or not wrestling, but competing against ranked teams. And it's showing. Like our teams, we had, especially our women's team, I think we had 3 of our women's team make it to nationals last year: basketball, volleyball, and soccer. Just some, you know, great results for a pretty young, you know, university. So anyway, I love the fact that Demetrius and Taylor are great examples to our team by just the toughness. Taylor, it's just even more challenging for him because he's going to Worlds in a week. He's leaving for World Greco, so he's trying to focus on Greco and still get enough collegiate in so that he's ready to go for our second competition and not be behind. Because 2 years ago he went and it hurt him. Like he was going to take the Olympic year and he wasn't going, so he hadn't been doing collegiate. So he looked really bad early. His timing and everything was off, and he was starting to click pretty well by the end of the year. But trying to balance his schedule and have him not overwork, because like if I left it to him, he'd do both. He'd practice a hard Greco practice, turn around, wrestle our practice, go to a lift, you know. Yep. And so we have to really monitor him. And my coach, Tadzmedov Erkeen, I have him running the RTC practices. And so we communicate a lot about what those should look like, and we really monitor and he gets one hard workout in with us a week, and then he gets a couple of drills just working on just technique and timing during the week. But right now it's mostly on Greco, and then, you know, that'll shift to all collegiate until we get closer to the end of the season. And even though we're going postseason, he'll start getting some Greco drills in, some parterre drills in, because we turn around within a few weeks and we have world trials. So, yeah, he balances a lot. You know, Demetrius is, the thing that's great is a year ago when we implemented these words and we're talking to them about what each of those words mean. When we got to the word grit, I just said to the guys, I said, you want to know what grit is? I said, don't look any further than this guy right here. And, you know, pointed to Demetrius and just said, you know, I think he's had 12 overtime matches since he's been here. He hasn't lost one of them. No kidding. And if he hadn't had a herniated disc, I really liked his chances in the semis, and we wouldn't have even had the same thing happen, you know, in the consolation semis where it just, his body gave out on him. But it's just fun to watch him. I'll never forget what a bunch of the teammates were saying at Big 12s the first time he won it. He fell behind 4-1. And, you know, was losing, and, you know, the guy was taking it to him. And we had wrestled him one other time, and it was the North Dakota State kid, and we had beaten him, and it was an overtime match, and beat him in overtime. And sure enough, Demetrius starts coming back in the third period, gets 2 takedowns, gets one, you know, with about 10 seconds left. And they go overtime. And as soon as they went to overtime, they're telling me later that everybody's just like, all right, we got it. He's got it. And of course, he gets the takedown in overtime. He has a toughness about him that, you know, the best wrestlers have it. The best wrestlers just know they're going to win. And even though he's not going to win every match, he knows he's going to win. And that's what you want. You don't play any games in your mind. You have no negative talk in your mind. Everything's positive talk. I loved about 4 years ago, they had, before the finals, they popped up a bunch of interviews from Dake and Taylor and, you know, a bunch of top wrestlers who had won national championships, and said, what is the difference for the finals? What do you do to get up for it, whatever? And their comments were all the same. It's one more match. You know, you can't treat it differently. You don't do anything differently. You learn your process and you believe in the process, and you go out and you put that same process in, and you treat every match the same. And I love those comments because it tied right into what we believe and what our guys are buying into.
Gotcha. One more thing about Demetrius. Between Boise State, that's where he was originally, they dropped the program, medical injuries. I mean, he's maybe the longest tenured D1 wrestler in the country. Do the guys ever call him grandpa or uncle or?
No, because he calls me grandpa, and so that name's already taken. They call him Pops.
Pops? Okay.
Yeah. And he's the one that sold him on it because he feels like he's their dad.
Gotcha.
And he's actually being such a great leader these days that's a good term for him. But, we've had some guys longer. I mean, Ben Kerr was our first All-American. He had surgery on his face. He had gray shirted at Oklahoma, went on a mission. He was 27 when he graduated.
Okay.
And so we've had a couple guys that have been longer. But, yeah, Demetrius, because he had the medical and he took his red shirt, when he could. And now we get the extra year.
Yep.
Yeah, he's been around a long time.
Gotcha.
We love it.
You're looking at your roster, you've got one of the most widely geographically diverse rosters I've seen. I think it was 12 states. Can you tell me a little bit about having people from all those different states? One, two, are there different styles that kids come in with from those different regions in the West?
Hey, that's a great question, and I don't hear that part of the question very often. If I was to talk about East versus West, yes, or Midwest, yes, but not within, and most of our guys are from the West.
Yep.
And so everybody's different. Just depends on what club they wrestled for, what high school they wrestled for. But if you, like the first time I went to the Beast of the East, I was coaching club. It was so apparent how much better Pennsylvania and Ohio was with riding than in the West. In the West, it was more on their feet. But man, they could ride. They rode at a collegiate level. They were like glue. And it actually was great for me because I picked up some stuff that I wanted to bring back and started working on some stuff at a different level. So it helped me as a coach. But gradually, we've had certain states where once we get a kid or two, the word about how we treat those wrestlers as a person, how we help them grow, how we develop them as wrestlers, that's what's kind of helped us kind of gradually expand the states that we were going to. Like the first couple of years I went to California, they were like, what division are you guys? They didn't know who we were. But, after you get a kid or two and they're performing, I got, you get coaches reaching out to you, or you have parents reaching out to you. Hey, I heard you have so-and-so. I heard some really good things about your program. And so gradually Colorado's grown, California's grown, Idaho's grown, Washington's grown, and we, for the first time the last 2 years, we've had more wrestlers from out of Utah than in Utah. But really they all come with their own styles, and we're fine with that. And we've developed a system that allows them to do that, but we tweak the things that aren't going to help them. These are bad habits, but I don't want to, when I was coaching kids in club, a lot of them would come back and say, they're trying to change my whole style. And they would just feel like they're lost. And so you can't, it's like our nutritionists, or when we have somebody trying to help our guys adjust their diet, you can't just have them change all of this and just cut all this out. You've got to gradually do that. And so, if they're doing something where they're lunging their shots, we got to go back to their setups, and we got to make sure that their load is right, the transition's the way it needs to be, so they're penetrating better, because they may have got away with it in high school, but they're not going to in college. So we'll adjust things individually, but we're not looking for a certain style. If we got somebody who likes to grind, we'll develop it. We got somebody who's really quick and wants to kind of hit more stuff and touch and go like Demetrius, we're going to teach him how to hand fight, because you got to know how to do it. And we're going to teach him to get to both legs, because when he got here, he was shooting on one leg. And, we're going to teach him how to keep his intensity up. So there were things that he came in with. Like his high school coach called me as soon as he came and just said, he lost 7 matches last year because he lost his intensity. So that gave me some focus in the practice room. So a few times I just stand over him, did it through the first couple of tournaments, just pushed him where just keep moving, and yet he also had the technique stuff that we're working on. And he never looked back. Like I said, super coachable kid.
Gotcha. speaking of being coachable, you're one of the few coaches who's made the leap from high school to D1 coach. What was it in your makeup? And I'm going to ask you about your purpose and your why later, but what allowed you to make this leap and develop the program? And if you could give yourself any advice now, as look with all this experience as a first-year coach, what would it be?
Don't do it. No. I knew it was going to be a long haul. So it's interesting because when I wrestled in college, I always felt like I would like to coach college. That'd be great. But I was coaching a club my last couple of years in college and fell in love with coaching the youth. And just so happened, I didn't move back to California because the job opened up at one of the main high school where those club kids were. And a bunch of the parents and the principal, the AD, everybody was kind of behind wanting me to kind of get the job. So I started coaching high school, and that kind of takes you out of the loop for college, because you stay connected. Like most of your coaches, they're a grad assistant or they're, a volunteer assistant or they're RTC, and they work their way into coaching and then work their way up to head coach. Mine was a very untraditional, path. And so, I coached high school for 7 years, loved every bit of it, but I also had some opportunities to make some money. So a job opportunity presented itself, and so I started coaching club. Then I started my own club where I was developing kids for the college level, because in Utah, we weren't developing coaches. We were losing programs left and right. 1999, we lost our last B1 school. And so, we're hurting. And so I was trying to develop kids, teach them how to be students of the sport, teach them series, build on those, and so that they could learn to watch film and teach themselves, because they understand pressure. They understand, some of the basics of what you're looking for. And that thing took off. So I was coaching 80 kids that were paying me for like year-round help. So even during high school, I'd go out and work with them. We would watch film. If somebody beat them, that they're going to wrestle at state, or they beat, but it's going to be their main competition. And so we had a really good thing going. So then the program opened up at UVU, and they hired Cody Sanderson, and I think Steve Sanderson was up for it. There were like 4 guys that were top-level coaches that were up for it. So I say, awesome. I've got another school I can feed into, with these guys. And I loved what I did. I was self-employed, my wife was getting her administrative, so it allowed her to do that, because I could stay with my kids in the morning and during the day, and then I would run my practices in the evening. And so everything kind of played out right. And then when Cody left to go coach with Cal, nobody was applying that I thought was a good fit. And I just was like, I'm checking with the guy who's doing the hiring, or the guy who's over that, saying, anybody else, apply, because he had called me both times and said, I want you to apply. And so I had some people calling me. I had some of my wrestlers that were at different colleges saying, hey, are you going to apply for the job? Because they would transfer. Or Ben Kerr, he was on his mission during that time, and it was kind of an interesting story what happened with him. But basically, I had a coach that I looked up to a lot. He used to be the Weber State coach. His name is John, and he basically John Webb was his name, but he coached at Weber when I was at Utah State, and he was kind of a new coach at the time. But he was like the last choice with recruiting. So you had the U, you had Utah State, you had BYU. Then after my first year, Utah dropped out. So he's getting guys that are not as good as the ones that BYU and Utah State are getting, and yet he's still getting an All-American occasionally. Huh. And they're having dual meets against us. And by the time I was a junior senior, we had a really good team. We were ranked, good lineup, and they gave us everything, that we could handle and still win. But when I started coaching high school, he pulled me aside midway through the first year. And he says, I love what you're doing with your team. And he starts telling me what I'm doing with my team. He's this computer on technique. Yep. And he had it down. I love that you guys are doing this. You must be drilling this way, or, whatever. And he started working my camp. I would do a camp down in St. George every year. we'd have, anywhere from 200 to 400 guys there. And I had some top coaches there, and he was like I said, a computer. He took a year off sabbatical to study Russia and went to Russia to study the wrestling. He spent time with Oklahoma State, kind of learning their system. And so we had always talked technique. And one time he asked me, why did you start Elite Wrestling? And I said, because I wanted to see Utah wrestling grow. I didn't see anything that was happening that was going to help us develop college coaches. So what I'm hoping is that I can develop these guys. They go off, wrestle to college, and a lot of them will come back and want to give back. And we can perpetuate our knowledge within the state. So that was my goal. So he starts calling me after Cody was going to leave and said, he talked to me 3 times. First 2, hey, are you going to apply? Whatever. And then a couple of other people, like I said, he called, some wrestlers called. And the last time he called me, the 3rd time he called me, he said, I remember we were talking about why you started Elite. What better opportunity than the only D1 program in the state, the only wrestling program in the state, to create that energy and produce coaches coming right out of the college program. And as soon as he said it, my stomach knotted up. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I love what I'm doing. I loved working with the youth. I loved everything about it. I loved being able to go to my kids' school and volunteer during the day. But I knew he was right, and I knew it was going to be a huge challenge. And I knew that I'd been out of a college room for years, decades. And yet I officiated D1 wrestling so that I could stay on top of things. So, I would go to tournaments and ref and come back. I would see things and I would teach my guys. So I knew that I could do it. I have a lot of faith but I knew it was going to be hard. And we'd do 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and then gradually it was 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Then we'd feel like we had it figured out, and then we'd realize, man, we're not even close. So, I've been here 15 years. This is my 16th year. And I feel like this package that we have, we finally have it right. And it's just a matter of me doing my job and making sure my coaches have the buy-in. And if I'm communicating it right, we do. And there's no gap between the coaches. So there's no communication gap. The guys are going to get the same message, and my coaches know. Somebody comes to them and they don't know the answer. They're telling me, we'll talk. Then we'll have a visit with the guy to help them in any way that we can. But what would my advice be? It would be like, man, I knew it was going to be tough, but it was even tougher than I thought. A lot of setbacks, a lot of steps forward. But I tell you what, this will be, I will look back and know that I did everything I could to develop wrestling the way that I could. And did I make mistakes along the way? Absolutely. I'm not the same coach now that I was 3 years ago. And I'm absolutely not the same coach I was 15 years ago. And I have a relationship with my wrestlers now that I've wanted all along. And it's because we're doing these things right. And that same coach, John Webb, he called me about halfway through about my 2nd year. And one of the guys on my team used to wrestle for him. And he called and he's just like, hey, coach, just want to tell you, make sure you're enjoying the process. Make sure you're enjoying da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. And he hit it right out. And I knew exactly what he was saying, which is, I'm not enjoying this because I am so emotionally tied to the success that I'm not just developing the relationships and coaching the way I know how to coach and really enjoying it with the guys. It was me getting them to get tougher. And at first we had to do that because we didn't have tough enough guys, not through the whole program. I had a handful of really good kids. So.
Gotcha. That's a great mentor or relationship that you're describing. Are there any other coaches that are still have a big impact on you or have had helped you get here that you'd like to recognize?
I saw that on the list, and it's funny because all of my coaches have had an impact on me, and not all positive. It's just like you think are you a parent?
Yes. Okay.
So if you were to ask your kids, is he perfect? They're going to say no.
Correct.
But if you're a great dad, you're going to hear a lot of really good things. You're going to hear that you did these things right. But they're still going to have things. Well, you lost your temper. Or you're not patient always. Or you weren't listening to me after an hour, when I'm telling you all my drama. But anyway, all of my coaches gave me something, whether I learned from what not to do or I learned from what I really liked. Like my first year in high school, they had a guy who was a club coach come in. I was at a private school, and he was 5'5" and 125 pounds. He was Filipino, and he's just muscly. Like he was a good wrestler. Like I was in awe of him. But he asked me, because I was our best wrestler even my freshman year, he asked me to help him with his club. So he was running the club after our practices. So he'd wrestle with me for like a half hour before the practice. I got so good on my feet because he was so quick, and I had to get, I was a 98 pounder that year, but it helped me. And he, with his club, he made every little kid, they were a bear or a tiger or a lion or a snake. And he wanted them to shake hands with their opponent and then make that noise. And every practice had this energy to it. And I just thought, wow, like, does he ever get tired? And just impressed with the passion that he had. Technically, he's helping a program. And technically, I didn't, I got better, especially wrestling him. My dad and I went up to the state tournament. I didn't make it to state that year in California. And we looked for a coach, and we found a guy that people spoke really highly of. His name was Corky Napier, and he lived in Madera, wrestled at Fresno City College, wrestled at Fresno State, and then he was an assistant coach. We got him down to San Diego, and he was my coach for the next 3 years, and he had a system of how he taught. I became more of a technical wrestler under him. Now, when I think back of any coach that I had that I thought I want to be like him, he was my first and probably my only to that degree, because I just love the fact that every single kid, whether they were the newbie, the worst kid on the team, the best kid on the team, he was always available at recess and lunch, and he always had a group of kids around him because he made them feel so special. And when I started coaching high school, I realized that my personality wasn't the same as his. Like I couldn't do it the same way as him. I was driven to get guys to a college level, to get them to be All-Americans in high school. And so I had 45 wrestlers, and they all bought in, and so our team was good in high school, every year, but I didn't have 75 kids. Like the coach 2 years after me still got the same results at state, not the same individual success that where the kids were going to college, but he had more kids that he was touching, 75. So what is your goal? What is your priority? And I had to realize that. I said, I can't be Corky. And I'm not this guy. I want to be me, but I want to be the best version of me that can reach to guys, still get a lot out of them, but still have that relationship with them. My college coach did some recruiting and PR stuff and energy, and he had experiences for us that were beyond just coaching. And I learned from that and grew. He hadn't wrestled that much. He didn't have, after his first year, he became the coach. So his technical background wasn't the same level as a lot of the college coaches, but he got a lot out of us by working as hard. But there are, like I said, there are things that we learn from everybody. My assistant coaches, I've learned from, and hopefully they've learned from me also. Erkeen comes from, the Russia system. He's from Uzbekistan. Yeah. So he wanted to do a couple of outside workouts in the fall, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to try that. And it was awesome. It was a game changer for us about keeping the guys fresh. Ethan got here and I coached him in club, but he went to Iowa. So he brought back some stuff from Iowa, right? Yeah. Ben Kerr wrestled for me, but he spent a year in Oklahoma. So there are things that Ben could share even to me, even though I was his coach, but I could learn from Ben. So the one thing that's great about wrestling is, and this is something that everybody should learn, as soon as you think you know it all, it's time to retire, because I'm still learning. I'm learning from these guys, and they're learning from me, and we're growing together. And granted, they better buy into the things we're teaching them because we know that's important. But I've got to be open-minded, as the head coach in our big picture, that it's easy to make decisions. So when we're teaching a certain ride, and Demetrius is really good, hey, Demetrius, I want you to show this part of that. I mean, there's no pride about who's teaching. It's not like, but we don't have Demetrius running practices. That's not his responsibility. It's his responsibility to have the kind of workout that he needs.
Yeah.
Right? So always learning.
Great stuff. learning from coaches, whether it's things you don't want to be or be, and different types of personalities. Really enjoyed hearing that.
Yeah, sorry. One other thing about this is I've learned from my own mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, I have to go through that same process like my wrestlers do and say, okay, why didn't this work? And guess who's responsible ultimately? It's on me. It may be that a wrestler or a coach did something that I didn't like, but ultimately, whose responsibility is for them to know what the right decision is?
Yeah.
It's mine, because they're not doing that on purpose. So anyway.
Yeah, good. I like it. You've touched a little bit on Ethan Urquine. Is Jason still there this year?
Yeah, this is his first year. So we've let, so you know, anybody who knows Jason knows that he's a technician. So we're super excited about the fact that we now have another coach that the guys are going to really just be like big-eyed and open ears and really want to spend time with. And he's going to help us get better. We're still learning things, but like I told him, we do a 6-week session in the summer, and I said, I want you to just watch what we teach. Then I want you to make your notes about what you want to add. And then in the fall, we're going to have you start adding it. So all the fall, every technique was him, because he was adding his stuff, and then I can decide where we want to add, or if he just added what we hadn't done yet. In a lot of cases, same stuff we teach. A few situations, I'm like, I've never seen that before. Like, I mean, there's a couple situations like I haven't ever done that, and I think there's been a couple things that we teach that he's like, oh, I like that, and he hadn't done that. And then the terminology, where we get all of our terminology lined up so that our wrestlers aren't hearing different words and not knowing what they mean, which we've had that in the past. So, but yeah, Jason's awesome.
Do you have defined roles for everybody, or is it more nebulous than that?
Absolutely defined roles. Because we don't have defined coaching roles as far as who they work with. But yes, we just had a meeting right before this video, and I went back over those because there were a couple things that were falling short. There are certain expectations that I have, and one of the things I learned is I have to know everything that's going on with one of my wrestlers, or if they make a change. So if, let's say that we're doing a Greco practice and we pull out a couple of our Greco guys that are on the college team, we're now getting close to our inter squad is next week. And so when Urquine sent me the thing, I said, okay, we've got these two guys who are redshirting, but I don't want them both pulled the same day because I don't want them doing it more than once. So, but then he pulled them in, and what happened is one of our Greco guys who's going to Worlds, we have two, one of them called Urquine late at night and said, I don't want to work out with this guy because he's too big and I'm getting my weight down, so can we pull two guys from the college team? And so Urquine, because it was late, didn't want to bother me and just kind of made that change. And so we have a whole thing where our strength coach knows who's supposed to be there, and he's calling me. He's like, hey, I got two guys going because Urquine hadn't told me. Gotcha. So we're just, every once in a while, we just need to go back over expectations, how we communicate. And I want to make sure there's no gaps because I want us all four exactly on the same page. But each one of them has separate responsibilities. When we made Urquine the RTC coach, because the RTC coach left, I said, you know, instead of hiring you as the RTC coach, you're still doing this, but I'm going to pick up some of the stuff I've assigned to you to give you the time to do that. So I'm doing scheduling, I'm doing travel, whereas he used to do that stuff, to give him more time, you know, so that he's getting up early to do a practice, he can have some time to himself and then come back in and do his college responsibilities.
Gotcha. So it appears that the school is pretty supportive of wrestling. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, how much visibility wrestling has at the school, and maybe talk a little bit about the financial situation if you're free to do that?
Yeah. So we have a very fortunate, unique situation. So let's start at the top of the school and work the way down. So what you would hope is you'd hope your president is aware of who you are,
yep.
And maybe is supportive of wrestling. You hope that your VP over athletics would be that. You hope that your AD is, and you hope your sport administrator is. So those four, but mostly the president, AD, and sport administrator. Because the VP, they've got a lot of other responsibilities besides athletics. But we hired a new president 3.5 years ago. And one of the guys who was on the selection committee is my mentor. He's a very successful business person. He wrestled in college. He's now retired, but he's been on the board of several businesses, taught, MBA at BYU, and was on the Regents, and then the trustees at UVU. So when they were hiring, he asked every single candidate, what are your thoughts about athletics? So the one they hired, President Jimenez, she's 4'11" and probably about 90 pounds. And she grew up in the slums of the Philippines and had no money. And some nuns took her and her sister and got her into school. And she was behind. And she is, you want to talk about grit. She is the definition of grit. She became, I'll tell you a story I won't share now, but I'll tell it to you just when we get off or whatever. Okay. But anyway, it defines that. But she gets grit. It's a big word for her. So when she got hired, Jack, his name is Jack Sunderlich, the guy who was helping interview, he got her to commit. Like he asked, and she said, I don't know anything about team sports. I've not been involved with them. I run. She does some martial arts stuff, but she's never been involved. She went to everything. Like I would see her at any soccer game, any basketball game, any volleyball game. She's there with pom-poms, and she's cheering all out. And Jack said, I want you to come to the first wrestling match. I want you to come see it. She came to the first wrestling match. We have the chairs for our mentors. I told you about that program. Yep. We have the chairs right down by our mats on both sides. So my family actually sits there as well. The president sat by my head mentor, who she knew of and had met. And she watched that first match, and she's never missed a match since. Wow. Like she'll say, I've got appointments, I'm going to have to, and she'll come to the beginning, and she'll be late to her meetings. She came to Big 12 last year. So Jason, who was coaching at Fresno, he was telling me, he said, yeah, me and the head coach, me and Troy, we're looking up there and going, that's their president. And we can hear her clear across the gym because there's only, there's very few people that could come.
Right.
So she's just loud as can be. She was going to come to nationals in Minnesota, and then it got canceled. She loves wrestling. And, she loves all the sports, but she learned a lesson the first spring. One of the basketball players asked her, she had met with all the athletes, and said, do you have a favorite sport? She said, yeah, wrestling. I love the grit. And now if you ask her, she's going to say she loves all the sports. But right. She has a really great connection with some of my guys. Her and Demetrius are super close. She has been a great mentor for Demetrius. But how many presidents go to, to nationals and go to Big 12s and she's down on the mat. Like she's hitting the mat, calling these guys by names. And she's still learning. So she'll hear somebody say, show them the lights. And she's yelling, show them the lights. And this kid we're wrestling from Iowa State, it's a heavyweight and he headbutts. It's the same one. It's Grimmel. You watch him close. He gets real close and he headbutts, but it's real deceptive. Yeah. And we didn't wrestle Tate that night. And I don't think Tate wanted to wrestle him because he's already beat him twice that year and he's tired of getting headbutted. So I told my backup, I said, he's going to headbutt you. I don't want you to headbutt him back because you'll get called. I said, I just want you to be physical with your hands. Make sure he knows you're there. Well, my wife sees it, and she's sitting next to the president, and she's like, headbutt him back. And the president's like, headbutt him back. What? And my wife's like, don't listen to me. But anyway, she's just super supportive, and she loves people. Every theme she has about engagement and inclusive, all of those words she emulates. She sets that example for us. She stops people in the hallway. She does stories on somebody she just meets and posts it, just an amazing example for us. And then our AD he was my sport administrator. He never misses a national tournament. Now he's over basketball now, so we don't see him as much, but he knows who we are. He knows what we're about. And when I told him a year ago that I'd step down if we didn't have that, he told me not to do that. And I said, the thing is I'm doing it because I know it's going to happen. I know with what we have, and I already know my coach is going to buy in. I don't have any doubts. But if we lose momentum this year, we need a new coach. We need new blood.
Yeah.
And because my goal isn't about me, it's about this program being the best it can be and continue to grow. And so as soon as I'm not impactful for that, I shouldn't be the person that's here. But anyway, so our AD and then our sport administrator is the same as our AD. He'll go to nationals now all the time. He's followed wrestling. He loved Cody when Cody was there and developed a passion for wrestling. He doesn't speak a lot, but he'll be mad at me if we wrestle bad. Like,
no
you won't tell me that, but I'll know.
Yeah.
Because he expects us to win.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll fly out. They came to our Oregon State Stanford duels that we had up in Corvallis last year. And, you know, super supportive, and they'll give me feedback. And the way I like it, it's like it's straightforward. Here's something that we've heard. Just want to give it to you. So love that. Our support is great. And then the community here, wrestling in Utah is strong. I mean, it's strong support. People are passionate about it. And so it's really good that way. And financially, you know, everybody got hit by COVID, so that hurt people a little bit. But because we don't rely on football and basketball income as much, there are things that we always worry about, but we didn't get hurt as bad as a lot of the bigger programs that really relied on that money. So we're sitting good. We're not going to be, you know, we're not at risk, and we're going to continue to do things to put us less at risk all the time. We're constantly raising money for that. We raise money for our RTC. We've actually got a fair amount in there. We're setting that up to hire a full-time coach and 2 resident athletes in freestyle to really get the freestyle program going, because that's the next step for that.
You mentioned a little bit about the finances. Are you fully funded for scholarships?
Yes.
And talking about fundraising, is there a set amount that you fundraise for your budget, or is there, you know, a balance of school funds, what you fundraise, and endowments?
So the point, we've got to get our RTC going further, and then we'll start working towards endowments. But basically my first job was to get an assistant coach. So I had some of my elite parents that committed for 5 years, and I had the amount that I was told it would take to hire a full-time assistant coach and their package with insurance benefits. Yep. And so that was soft money for a couple of years. Our program started doing really well, and they made it permanent. And then Arkeen was hired, soft money, same thing, and then they hired him permanent. And so I basically, we have a group of guys that are past parents or past club parents, some of our mentors that donate monthly to a 3-year commitment that was going into our club fund. I use our club fund to supplement our assistant coaches. So right now it's a little over $100,000 that we raised just for our assistant coaches to be able to keep them, because what the school pays them is not enough to keep them.
Right.
And the school is doing everything they can, and we get that. It's growing pains, but anybody on the outside coming here, they're getting everything they'll get from these other schools. We started at 4 scholarships, and we got to 9.9 in a few years. We have all the scholarships. We've got money coming in. We're going to have a great RTC because we've been real smart about how we've been saving that money to be able to be in a position to hire these guys for a long period of time, and not saying, okay, we got this money, let's hire a coach, and then we got to keep raising this every year, this amount. We've got enough that it's manageable. And we expect that RTC coach, because he's full-time, to raise some money for the RTC. But we've got a couple of pretty good things that we set up that's giving us a good chunk to get those basics done and to start preparing us with what we've saved. But yeah, we're not at risk financially. We're secure, but we don't have everything we want for the future, which are a full RTC with at least 6 athletes, where we've got 2 lighter weights, 2 middle, 2 upper, you know, and get at least that, where when we're recruiting, like we signed Kyle Parko from Fresno State, who became an All-American last year as a redshirt freshman. We signed him. Nobody else was going after him. Second, he did what he did at Big 12 and got moved up a weight. He was 41 all year, went 49, gets 6th at nationals. Everybody was after him because they're fair game on transfer. And he ended up signing for one that had a stronger RTC. And he's like, this is what I want, you know. And we got that, but at the same time, I had the money already. If I had known that ahead of time, I'll get you whoever you want.
Right.
We'll pay to get that because that's what we want too, but we're waiting for the right time with the right people to be able to do that. And the fact that we're waiting one more year and Dimitri will be out, we'll be paying him. and 2 more guys and a freestyle coach, that's our start. That's our freestyle start. We're already doing tremendous things in Greco.
Yeah, exactly.
And our women, we've got women coming now. So
is that as a program?
Not as a program, but with the RTC.
Okay.
We have one girl that graduated from college that we put her up, and she started drilling with Sage Mortimer, who was the best high school girl, who's now at college. But now we have practices where high school girls that are really good are coming out to work out with her, and we'll gradually start having some college guys or college women when they get done coming out. We had about 6 girls that came through to train with us just because Sage and Lauren were here. And so that's growing. During our big banquet, we do a Hall of Fame banquet for Utah Wrestling. We host that, and so we did a video on that. And it's growing. And they just hired Adeline Gray's sister, Geneva, as the women's director. So there's a lot of energy that'll be going. It's really exploding. So we're super excited about that. And who knows? Maybe someday it'll go from that to a program.
So is there anybody actually spearheading that at Utah Valley or not?
No, it's me.
It's you.
That's directing I'll be talking to Geneva about how she wants to use us. I sent a thing to USA Utah Wrestling, which is we work together. They help us with all of our 3 main fundraisers for the college. We do some things for them. But I told them, talk to Geneva, find out how we can, really help her and centralize some stuff into our room. Snow College, it's a junior college, is going to start next year for both men and women. Okay. So we want to have those people all training here in the off season. It's a win-win.
Gotcha. We talked briefly about your college career. You were an All-American at Utah State. They don't have a program anymore. I have friends who've wrestled at schools. The program's disappeared. Or in some cases, the schools even disappeared or merged. What does it feel like? Like when you think about it, how do you feel about your college experience and that the program is gone? I mean, other than it shouldn't be gone, but what are your thoughts when you look back at it?
Well, I was about 5 years out when they dropped, 1989. I was 5 years out. I was still helping because I was still in the area, so I would go work out with them in the fall. Still loved it, would help out, donate money. I helped with their Wolverine, or not Wolverine, but the Big Blue Club. My coach, I would still go there and make calls because as an All-American, that name carries a little bit of weight. Yeah. So I was still active with it. When they dropped, it shouldn't have dropped, just like BYU shouldn't have dropped. But, Title IX had a reverse effect in some ways, right? The minority sports took the hit. And, I wish that they were treated the same way that the women were when they finally got it right for the women. But mostly what the schools were doing is trying to balance their budget without raising more money. We don't want to raise more money, so let's cut. And I've been worried about that once they did cost of attendance. And I think that was a big reason for Boise. They couldn't raise more money. They were already raising to have a great football program. The basketball program's getting better. Well, they said it's all about baseball. But then the next day after they dropped the program, they put all this money to restructure the football. Coaches and equipment, facilities. And I was worried that was going to be a chain reaction like Title IX was. Now you got NIL, which again might separate the top schools from the smaller ones. And those things have those kinds of reactions. And so, wrestling's not stable yet. And even though women are growing and the programs, you see a lot more. It's not at D1 until Iowa just had their women's program. As we start seeing more and more women's program, then I think the security is going to feel like a little more stable.
Gotcha. How old were you when you started wrestling?
I was 5.
5?
Yeah, my brother did it the year before. My dad was a football coach, and the other football coach wanted him to come in and roll around with the bigger kids. And so that's his first exposure. He started officiating, and he took us to a couple matches. And then when my brother was, that next year, my brother was 7, I was 4, he took my brother to wrestle, and he did judo. And I had to wait till I was 5, but I loved it. I mean, I said earlier, I am super competitive. Like, if I went to school and I heard somebody was really fast, I had to race them. I'd go find them and say, let's race. You know, I mean, I fought all the time, but it wasn't about hurting somebody. It was just about winning. I just had to compete always.
So competitive at 5, you were probably about the same age. How do you keep that competitive fire going for such a long period of time?
Passion. I mean, passion. It's what you want. Like, if these guys knew how competitive I was, I do a pretty good job, I think. If guys are telling me they can't tell that I'm not competitive, then I'm hiding it pretty well. That means that I'm keeping big picture in mind when I'm talking to them, and I'm not making a big deal if they win or lose a duel, but just talking about the process and where I'm seeing some gaps or what we can do better. But like even my wife was really laid back. Like her parents were so mad at her. She was so good in gymnastics and dance. But in gymnastics, she ends up like winning her level at state. But she doesn't even know what the score is. She doesn't care. She's having fun. And when we were playing games, when her and I got married, we went up to see my family and we're playing games. She started getting feisty with me. And later I asked her, why were you doing that with me? And she goes, because you want to win so bad. It just, I couldn't let you win. I didn't want you to win.
Yeah.
And I've had that a bunch of times, whether I'm doing fantasy football. I'm not trading with you. I don't want you to win. I go, why? Because you want to win so bad or whatever. Anyway, I don't know. But yeah, I still love this sport. And so people have asked me, when are you going to retire? Not like, hey, when are you going to finally retire? But there's like some people are asking me because they like what we're doing and they want to know that I'm going to be there. They want to know my assistants are going to be there. And that's why I try to pay my assistants so they're not going anywhere and they love being here and working here. But, it could have been it could have been going into this year, I could have been done. So it's going to be this amount of time to this amount of time, or it could be next year. So don't know. But as long as I'm loving it, I won't step down until, I do have that in mind, but I'm not going to say it. But I could anytime if I lose the passion or if we lose momentum.
Gotcha. Now, speaking of the competitive fire that you have, Dimitri was telling me you guys both had knee surgery on the same day, and it was a race to see. It was a race.
Baby. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I saw him at rehab one day. I knew we got at the same time, but I didn't know we were going to be at the same place. So yeah, but I had a replacement. He had ACL surgery.
And what happened when you were walking first? Did you tell everybody?
No. First of all, okay. I'm 60, so yeah. I might forget things. But now remember, he calls me Grandpa, right? So he says stuff like, "Oh well, what do you expect, Grandpa?" or whatever, or "You can't remember this," or whatever. Anything that he can. We were before I got the knee thing, we were going to do like 2 minutes or 1 minute in Greco because he thought he could beat me in Greco, which I was really good at. And he would be okay. He'd be okay at it, but that's not his forte. Yeah. And I knew for a fact he couldn't beat me in it, but he's calling me on in front of the team. And I'm looking at Ethan, and Ethan knows what I'm capable of. He's seen me wrestle before. And then I had this problem with my knee. So we're not going to ever do that. I'm not going to wrestle live. But there may have been some time where he was saying something and maybe coming, and I might have said, well, why did it take you so long or something? I don't know. But no, I don't make a big deal about that. But he did ask me, and I don't know if you have another question for me, but we were at a wedding last week and a half ago, and we're just talking wrestling. My wife's next to me, his girlfriend's next to him, and we've been talking wrestling for about 30 minutes, so my wife's like bumping my leg, like, hey, get everybody into the... And Dimitri says to me, Coach, I just want you to know that I could beat you when you were at your best. I could beat you when you were at your best. And I'm like, how does he want me to respond to that? I'm just like, Demetrius, I said, okay, first of all, I believe you can beat anybody. And that's, and I do. He's gotten to a point where I feel like he can beat anybody he goes up against right now in college. He's going to have another level he's going to need to go when we go freestyle and get better at that. There's some areas. But I have that belief, and I said, but even though I believe you can beat anybody, I'm not giving you that for sure. I said, I think it would be a great match, but I know all your weaknesses, so I don't know how to exploit those. But I said, I'm not saying that for sure I would, but I'm not giving you that. Sorry. I said, but I do believe you can beat anybody. Gotcha. I don't know if he was satisfied with that, because I think he just wants me to say, you're so dang good, you kick my butt. But right. He's not going to get that from me.
Now, he says you bowl regularly, and he was able to beat you without bowling before.
No, that's a bunch of crap. But he did. His team beat our team, and it was the coaches, and so he's rubbing it in. This was right before I had surgery. This is when my knee was messed up. This was actually even earlier than that. He wasn't hurt at all.
Okay.
And so Erkine's knee was messed up. My knee was messed up. And so, yeah, we bowled terrible, and they beat us. And I said, we're going to bowl against you again, because there's no way you'll beat us. And, yeah, but we bowled once. And I don't ever bowl. These guys, where did he go with the recruits? They went bowling. So he's full of crap.
That's hysterical.
He's curling your leg.
All right, we're over an hour here. Let me try and get through a couple more questions. We talked earlier about the schedule and getting kids ready. It's not about kind of winning duels, but it's about being ready for championships and conferences. But you and Oregon State have a match set up for this winter, January 2nd, I think, in Nampa, Idaho. What's behind having this in a state like Idaho versus Utah, Oregon?
Well, again, it's to promote wrestling in Idaho. It's to get them excited. I mean, I know they want to get that program back to Boise, and maybe if they get some different leadership, they can. There's a lot of people there that have put heart and soul into, wrestling in Idaho. And so, like I said, Todd Cady, who was, one of our wrestlers' coaches, reached out to both of us to see if we'd be interested in that, and we definitely were interested. And so it's good for the sport. It's just like occasionally going to a high school and doing the match there, where they may not come to you, to get them more excited. It's good for coaches to be able to say, here's what I think you're capable of, and here's the next level. Get them excited.
Gotcha. Do you have enough information right now to project your starting lineup, or at least who the final competitors will be for each weight?
Yeah, for the most part. At 125, we're going to wrestle two guys, because I won't be wrestling Taylor all the matches. I won't be doing that at 65 either. And so Demetrius and him, they've got a lot of matches under their belt. So we're going to try to have them fresh for nationals. So they'll sit sometimes. We'll pace it out. We'll lay out a schedule for them. So what we're thinking, we have two really good 25-pound freshmen. And they're both first-year freshmen, because one was here last year and got that back, and that's Case Mauger. He had a really good year. Vega from South Dakota State was ranked top 15. We wrestled Case in that duel, and he had him beat till the last second. He got taken down because he was sitting too long in a tie, got taken down with 1 second to lose by one. He had another match against a ranked guy, Taylor from Oregon State, was losing early, came back, was ahead, made a mistake and got pinned. But, he's getting better all the time. So we're excited about him, but we're going to redshirt him this year. Taylor has this year and next year left. And then we have Yusuf Lilly, who, made the finals of Freestyle Fargo this year. He's out of Washington. He's four-timer. Just super talented, and he's getting better every day. So we were going to wrestle him this year, redshirt him next year, redshirt Case this year, then wrestle him next year. And, Case will have the option to go 25, 33. He's a big 25-pounder. Yusuf's definitely a 25-pounder, and Taylor will definitely stay at 25. So we've got those three guys there, but it'll be Taylor and most likely Yusuf. I have another 25-pounder.
Can I ask you? I'm sorry. About Yusuf, I saw in his bio that he was born in Mexico. Did he come to America to wrestle, or?
No, he still has family there, but a lot of his family came over. He was in Ensenada.
Yep.
Just down south of Tijuana.
Yep.
So not too far in, down into Mexico. But I didn't know that. I was reading his bio and said, hey, I didn't know that. I said, do you still have family there? And I told him that was my family had one of our best meals down there, because we got there right when they were about to close, And they gave us all the lobster halves that they had left for a really cheap price. So, but yeah, he has family there still, but a lot of his family moved up. But it wasn't just for wrestling. Like
Gotcha.
He was young enough that I don't even know if he was wrestling yet.
Okay, all right. And I saw Ensenada, and a long time ago, I had my brother in Ensenada, and I had to check him in because he was a minor. And the guy I checked him in with saw I was wearing a wrestling T-shirt, and he told me freestyle wrestling was big in Ensenada. I didn't know, but I'd never heard it anyway. That's all right. So going on, I'm not sure if you were done with 25.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we have an older kid there, but he was struggling with some stuff, and we'll see if he comes back a little bit, and maybe he'll get in the mix there as well. At 33, we had the transfer, Hayden Drury, placed 6th at Big 12s, first year freshman also. Really like him, and we have a kind of a veteran kid who's been, backup. Like he was a walk-on. He's on scholarship now. He's super good in the room, and he's getting better. But that Keanalu, but he goes by Chip Estrella. So Hayden and those two will be the two at 33, and 41. We got several guys there right now, which is we're trying to change that for next year, but a couple of them are redshirting. But right now, starter most likely will be Ty Smith, who was qualifier last year at 33. I don't know if you know much about his background, but he was at Drexel. We had recruited him. He was a Fargo national champ and highly recruited. He was down to Cornell, Drexel, and us. And he went to Drexel, and then he got really sick, and he almost died. He ended up getting just under 100 pounds.
Wow.
And just, and he was wrestling 33. It started to grow. So he came here. He got sick again. We got him the next year, but he was still recovering. So all his first year is still going to be a medical year because he wasn't able to compete yet. Last year, he started finally getting healthier and having more energy. This year, it's continued to grow, but we're letting him grow. And so we thought that was the natural thing to do when Hayden transferred, was to move him up because it allowed him to continue to grow and get healthy. And he's continuing to get stronger all the time. So he's going to be a threat at 41, probably even more than he was at 33. And I have several guys but we don't want to pull any of them out of redshirt. But I did find out today, as we were just going over everybody's way, one of my guys who's been here a couple of years is going down. He was at 41, moved up to 49 last year. His brother's going 49 this year as a new freshman, and he's going back down to 41. So most likely it'll be Ty Smith and then James Zimmer, a kid out of Texas that hasn't started for us before. But we got Stockton O'Brien at 41 that we're starting to try to put weight on him to go 49 next year. And we have Tyson Humphreys, and both of them are very, very credible, very competitive guys that wrestled for us last year and were competitive and are getting better all the time. So we feel pretty good about where we're at in those couple weights. Then at 49, not the first week probably, but the second week or the second competition, we'll have Jackson Garut, who's out of Colorado. He got better with every match. Only had a handful of matches. Then we had 2 weeks, and then we had a couple others. He got better with every match. So we knew he was going to be good anyway. So we're super excited. But we have a couple guys that are just bringing their weight down a little bit slower because we were thinking about having to go up to 57 because our 57-pounder last year was a first-year freshman. Danny Snedeker had trouble making that weight. But now Danny's talking about going down. We don't really want him at the same weight as Demetrius. So that'll be our best lineup. And it looks like they're both going to go down based on what they want. I don't make them. I mean, One of my things, they're not going to be happy if I'm making them, and I know a lot of coaches disagree with it because you're paying them, but we're it's going to work out. It's going to work out, and I'll let them know what I think our best team is, and I'll let them know that I can help them. We hired a nutritionist this year to help these guys, and anyway, so they're bought in, so eventually we're going to have Jackson at 49, and we do have a couple of other guys there that can challenge there. We have a third-year guy, Sam Edelblut, who's basically a redshirt freshman. That's also going to go that weight. Then we'll redshirt Alex Emmer and whoever else. We have 57. Danny is planning on coming down. I have a couple of guys. One would redshirt who just got back off a mission, who was here as a freshman, Cameron, and then we've got Brig Hoops, who was a walk-on until this year. We put him on a little bit of money. He's getting better all the time. So eventually we think it'll be Danny and then Jackson, going down those two, 57, 49. But we're getting better with those other guys in the background. And at 25, 33, 41, we've got good backups. We're going to be good. So that's something, like I said, we really want is we want somebody stepping in that knows they can be an All-American or a national champ as well. At 65, we have Dimitri. And because Danny's going to go down, I'm not sure who the other guy will be, but we have a couple of other guys in that weight. 74, Kikana Ferret, who wrestled most of the year at 65 for us last year. He's going to be one that's going to surprise a lot of people. Super talented. I think everybody already knew that about Danny. Jackson's going to surprise a lot of people. It's going to be a lot better than what people would expect, even from his hometown. He's going to be good. And so we have him, and then we have a kid who wrestled a lot of 97, 84 for us last year coming down, Hunter Morse, who also was a walk-on until this year. We put him on some money. Love his work ethic, and he'll be good there, and we'll try to push Kikana. At 84, we have a tough situation, again, where we got our starter from last year who we know's good. He's done some things to change. He had some real issues about his conditioning and being able to wrestle hard through the match. So we tried to wrestle just slow. He tried to do that in practice, and we're like, this isn't going to work well. But over the spring, summer, fall, he's progressed. And I mean, he won the national collegiate that they would do it before his mission. He won that. Like, he's a talented guy. And then we had the transfer who was ranked last year and is ranked in the preseason right now, is Hunter Cruz, came over from Fresno. So that's a good way. We got two really, really solid guys. We've got a couple freshmen that we're going to develop that'll redshirt this year. At 97, I have a kid who's also started at 84, 97 at times, Ashton Seeley, who's a redshirt junior. But we also have a transfer from Cal Baptist, which is Evan Bachman, and he's going to be really good as well. And we're solid there too. So that's two pretty quality guys. And then we had our heavyweight from last year, Chase Trussell. And then we had our heavyweight from last year who got hurt, Jaden Woodruff from Colorado. He's been hurt the last couple of years, so hopefully he stays healthy and we can see what he can do. But they're both competitive heavyweights. We need to get them better, get them where they know they're beating ranked guys, All-American guys. But Chase has done that. He did it the year before, but put so much pressure on himself last year. And so I think he's worked through that, and we'll be able to relax, enjoy it, and trust the process a little bit more. So we mostly know who the first, second guys would be. They got to wrestle off, and we'll see how that plays out. But, I don't want to tell anybody where they're going to end up if they've got different ideas about it. So.
Now, are you the kind of coach who it's all about a wrestle-off, or will there be some tournament results and wrestle-offs, and how does that finally get settled?
I will never use a ranking match if I can help it. I mean, you know each other.
Yeah.
We go by what they do out there.
Yeah. And,
we had a couple of situations last year where we flip-flopped who was starting because the other guy performed better. So we tell them ahead of time, we will do our inter-squad and we will rank a match. But this will not have any bearing on who will start except for the first dual meet. But when we go to a couple of open tournaments, we're going to be able to see who's competing better against the people out there. And if there's a difference, then that change will be made, and it'll never change back unless something happens. We've had a few situations where they don't separate themselves, so I'll wrestle both of them at times, and then they'll wrestle off, in February to see who's going postseason. And it's 2 out of 3. So if you win the ranking match in the inter-squad, that's 1. So we do count it. It does carry weight, but it's not going to be our use for information unless we have to do 2 out of 3.
Gotcha. Talking here, I'm getting a sense that you're really about the process, and talking about the secret sauce of the 4 words and your why and all that stuff. But do you ever? Are you having goals in your mind like this is how many All-Americans that we want this year?
Nobody will ever hear those numbers. Nobody will ever hear what my expectations are. Unless it's to that kid and I feel like he set his ceiling too low.
Okay.
Or set ceiling. I will let him know that this isn't the best version of himself in my opinion, and here are some things I think would help. But they've got to buy into that, right? Same thing. That process is important. Let me tell you why that buy-in is so important. Guess how many wrestlers of my 34 guys reached their goal last year?
Zero.
Because both of the guys who placed planned to be national champs, and everybody else had to plan on being All-Americans. Like, if they're not, they shouldn't be in our program.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I know some need to continue to get better before they're ready for that, but they know that that's what they're working to. So I'm doing, how do you handle a guy that knows I planned on being an All-American and I'm not the starter? How do you get him to still be positive? How do you have anything for him to look forward to? Well, he's got to buy into the process, not the result. And so get away from the result and be the best you can be, and keep evaluating what that's going to be. And it's going to happen how it happens. You can't control the ref. You can't control the other partner. You can't control an injury. So why would you feel like a failure when you did everything right? You need to be able to say, I'm doing everything right. I am proud of myself. I feel like I can accomplish anything by doing the process the way I've learned to do it. I've evaluated, I've been honest with myself, I've constantly challenged myself to be the best version of myself. I am going to be ready from when I graduate from here to be able to have a career that's going to be successful, to be able to have a family that I know how to be successful in having that and how I interact with them. You know, it makes sense. But yes, I definitely know what I would like to see. But it's not for me to say, it's for them. And yes, I will get every single one of those individuals to know that I expect a lot, that I know that this is a special team, and it is, you know, and everyone is different, but it's special in its own way. But the intensity these guys are practicing, it's special. And I don't know where that's going to take us, but it's going to take us good places.
Coach, we've been talking for about 90 minutes. Is there anything I should have asked you that I did not ask you?
Heck, I think we've covered pretty much everything. You know, I do say that every coach, every wrestler needs to have a support system. You know, because you've got to have like I tell my guys, you know, don't go run to your parents if you feel like something wasn't done right. Talk to me first. Let's walk through it, and then if you don't like it, then go or share the whole process with them. I had one situation last year where handled wrong, had to go backwards through this for them to learn it and for the parents to learn it. And we're fine. And it was great. It was a great learning thing for everybody. But if they would have come to me first, would have been great. But I do think that they need to rely on their teammates and to talk about things. They're not going to come to vent to me. But I do tell them, I said, if it's a problem, if you want to solve it, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think, are what you're doing right now, will that solve the problem? And if you're sitting there whining, complaining, blaming, it's not going to solve the problem. So you're probably not doing it right. What will? And most of the time it's going to be, come let me know so the staff can get involved, your family can get involved. But if it's a problem, at least let me try to fix it or work with you, let you know the situation before you get your parents all pissed off. But I don't mind if they're venting things are going wrong or what they're trying, but not that we're treating them wrong. And those wrestlers grew up a lot with that experience, and I want complete transparency. So just to say that without my wife, without my daughters, and now my son-in-laws, I couldn't do this. You know, their support, their undying loyalty and support allows me to enjoy this because there are no conflicts, you know, as far as what I'm doing. And that's the biggest thing for wrestlers too. I'll get wrestlers who, you know, because they go on missions, they're older, and so before they're done, they're getting married maybe. And I always ask them, I say, does your wife know or your fiance know how much time this takes, what your goals are? Because if those aren't answered or answered positively, we're going to have a problem because their support system's not there. So that's probably one thing that I've learned that I think is really important for the wrestlers, you know, to know or to have.
Gotcha. Follow up on your wife. How long have you been married?
28 years.
Did she know anything about wrestling before she met you?
No, she saw me wrestle. I wrestled in a meet, and I would go 2 weights, and just to try to get some challenges or whatever, because there weren't enough college guys still wrestling. There were a few, but she told me she thought I was mean, because when I'm getting ready for a match, I'm focused and I was aggressive. But anyway, I tried to explain it to her or whatever, but she's like, yeah, I don't like seeing you mean like that. But yeah, and she loves my guys. Like, she might not even met a kid, well, now she does. When we have a barbecue or something early in the year, she'll know them, but she loves these guys, and she'll tell me all the time, you are so lucky. These are such great young men. And I was like, I know, I wish I stopped and enjoyed that more, but we're working and working. I said, but I do it enough now where they know I enjoy them. They know I love them. They know I'll do anything I can for them, but they also know that I'm going to push them and do everything I can for this big picture. So.
Going back to your wife, my wife was similar, never any wrestling, didn't know a wrestler before she met me. I'd coached at other college, high school, blah, blah, blah. But now she's probably one of the best commentators or sideline coaches. Is your wife that way? Where would you rate her on 1 to 10 of wrestling knowledge?
Oh, she's probably like a 7 or 8. I mean, she doesn't know some of the moves. But she knows what's going on. She knows when they're ahead. She knows when they're behind. She knows when they're not giving the right effort. She knows when they're she loves watching Demetrius. Demetrius is active all through the match, and she loves that. She had a couple of wrestlers in the past where they didn't do that. She goes, I just can't watch. I feel so bad for them because it's like, they're not performing, so it's kind of embarrassing for them. She's like, do you have anybody else that'll at least go wrestle? And she loves it. Like there's some kids that she knew really well. But yeah, she gets it. And like I said, she knew that guy was headbutting.
Right.
And she's extremely loyal. She's not going to yell at the ref to just yell at a ref, but if the ref is screwing our kid, if she sees it, I'm just putting in her terms. For me, it's okay, I don't like that call. I'm going to go to the table, ask him.
Right.
But she's like, yeah, and she'll yell something. But my wife's an extremely nice person. And you know how the coaches can gum up and down the mat? She asked, and I won't say who the coach was, but she asked the coach if they could move a little to the side because they were standing in front of him. And he's like, this is my aisle. And she goes, okay. And she patted him. She goes, don't touch me. And she goes, I'm sorry. She's telling me later, she goes, I felt so bad. I wanted to go up and talk to him afterwards, but he was out of there. And so I was just saying, yeah, they can walk up and down. And so you can ask them to move, but they don't have to. So
can you tell us what duel that was?
What's that?
What duel was that?
No, I won't. Right. No, I respect all the coaches we wrestle against, and he was kind of a dick about it, but he's passionate. He's in the middle of coaching. Yeah. You don't want. He's probably say, "Why do you have the chairs right there?"
Right.
And we have it far enough back where he can walk up and down. I mean, he was in his rights, and I just told her he has every right. She goes, I know, I believed him, but I just patted him and let him know it was okay, and he got mad at me for touching him.
That's
so, but no, he knows who he is. So.
He knows. Well, Coach, I've really appreciated your time getting to talk to you, having this wide-ranging conversation. Hope to catch at least your match here in Idaho, and I'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.